Well, welcome back to another episode of Rocky Unscripted, where we talk about faith when Sunday is over. We are continuing a series walking through the Enneagram, and not just talking about numbers on the Enneagram, but talking about subtypes. And today we have two very special guests joining Mitch and I again. We have Luke and Susan. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having us, guys.
It's gonna be awesome.
We're excited about talking about fours today. There was a season where I thought I was a four. So I think there's a lot that when I read about fours, when I talk to fours, I'm like, I get that. So I'm excited to hear what you guys have to share.
I would love to know to dive into that sometime.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I might. The thing that made me think I might be a four, I will definitely bring up and see if you guys can relate to it. Yeah. Because to me, it was like, yes, that's absolutely. And what I've since learned is it's still true for me, but it's because of a totally different motivation or a different angle as a six. So already we are only a couple minutes in, and I'm grateful that we're talking about me, because I try to bring things back to talking about me.
You do a good job.
Free counseling. There's just so much that I can learn about myself. But before we dive into the conversation, we'll talk about sixes before we even get into the subtypes. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about you guys. I just said sixes. We're talking about fours. We're talking about fours.
We're still not just talking about you, dude.
I promise you. So, Luke, people might recognize you from stage at Rocky, other videos for Rocky Worship, all that stuff.
Yeah.
You've been on the podcast before.
Yep.
But I don't know that we've said, like, hey, what does life look like? So tell us about yourself. What does life look like with work, family, hobbies, whatever?
Totally. Yeah. Right now I am in full dad mode.
Yeah, you are.
That is my baby is 11 months old today.
Noise.
Today. Yeah, he's 11
so
months old. He is very, very, very cute.
He's cute and he's sick right now, right?
Yeah. Mom had to go pick him up from daycare today. Anyway, yeah, I'm in full dad mode. So I tell everyone right now, I'm the most unavailable person you know, which is like not very good being in ministry, but I've just totally simplified my life down to, it's like when I'm at work, I'm like totally 1,000% in, but when I'm home, I'm 1,000% in there. So people are like, can you do this? I'm like, I don't know, probably not.
Yeah.
You know, because right now I'm just in full family focus mode, and it's been an awesome 11 months. Obviously with the baby, it's like there have been months in a row I didn't sleep, but right now we are in a good run with sleep. So anyway, yeah, I'm leading worship every Sunday, and I'm here every day of the week at church and just doing full-time worship ministry. It's awesome. So yeah, that, and I'm dadding it up right now.
You guys are writing some killer songs?
Writing a lot of songs, yeah. That's just so fun. And I just love the seasons where it's like, oh, we got another one, got another one. So yeah, we're having a lot of fun right now. Life is fun. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Really hard, but also fun.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Susan, why don't you fill us in? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I am on the opposite end of the spectrum. My kids have all launched, and my baby's in another state this summer, and my oldest is in another state, and so Andy,
Your grown baby.
My grown baby.
Okay, just to clarify.
I've shipped all my babies off.
Definitely clarify. Yeah, she's 20. So
Okay, yeah.
yeah, so now we're paying for car insurance, a lot of that, but not diapers.
Yes.
Not diapers.
You have the time at home.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. And so it's a lot more of like sitting outside on the porch, looking at the sunset, lots of photography, lots of camping trips.
I was going to ask about hobbies.
Yeah.
Photography, is that one you'd say?
That definitely.
Okay.
Yep. Reading. My kids got me a crossword subscription. I've been doing that. I'm getting really smart, guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, if anyone has purchased the Pursuit Journal that you guys have developed over the last couple of years, a lot of the photography in that journal is from you. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So people out there, you might even own some of your photography. People listening might own some of the photography you've taken.
Yes. Yep.
That's so cool. You guys did that.
cool.
Yeah. You should sign it. Sign some of them.
Will you sign all the Pursuit journals?
Yeah. You can sign all, I don't know what you'd sign, sweatshirts that we've sold for Rocky Worship.
Yeah, heck
There's no vinyl out there or anything like that.
Not yet.
Now. Yeah. Did I interrupt you? You were going to ask a question?
That's okay, man.
Moved on. I stepped all over it. I'm sorry. Mitch, I would love for anyone listening that maybe just curious and they haven't done a whole lot of research into the Enneagram. Tell us about the Type 4 and just in generalities. What is it like to be a Type 4?
Yeah. So typically they're known as like the intense creative or romantic or individualist. Those are typical like titles that are given. But the key motivation is to really be unique and to be authentic to themselves and to present authenticity to the world, and then to be understood by other people. And their focus, the things they focus on in the world, are expressing themselves authentically, being attuned to their emotions, and then focusing on that which brings true meaning and depth to them, as well as like beauty and aesthetics and texture and sounds. And I mean, just really aware of what's going on and things that are truly beautiful. And then the worldview, how a force shows up in the world, is they really do have this envy streak have a tendency to compare themselves with other people and have the sense that something is missing in their life. And each of the different subtypes pursue this envy and getting that need met in a little bit different way. And so they then strive for that true identity. How do I find that missing piece? How do I get that thing that is out there so I can be my true authentic self and be whole and understood by others? What would you guys like add to that? Does that resonate with you? Or like, oh yeah, that is, I see that. And what else would you add being a 4?
Man, I hear that and I'm like, yes, yep, yep, that's me. There's this like intense desire to be unique, and like anything that I like see trending, I'm like, no, I don't do that anymore. You've probably seen that and like just working together for so long, but it's like, you know, even when it comes down to like the things that I wear or the things that the way that I write songs or it's like, I start seeing trends and I'm like, okay, I hate that now. Even if I was doing that, you know, however long ago, it's like, I have this thing inside of me that's like, if I'm not unique in that, it's like, I don't know, it kind of loses its thing to me. You know what I mean? So yeah, I definitely resonate with that. I definitely resonate with the envy thing and the missing out thing. There's been so many things that's just like running through my life. It's like, oh, I wish this, I wish that. And I see it the most in like music stuff, where it's like, why aren't the songs that I'm writing doing this? And like, I'm looking at my friends who are I'm looking at my friends who are like totally crushing it.
It's more like a comparison thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I definitely see it there. This feeling of missing out, and then like striving to like, okay, so if I want to be there, okay, if only I was a better singer, if only I was a better this or that, then I would finally, and so I'm like grinding on all sorts of different things. So everything you said so far, I'm like, yeah, that's.
I'm curious. You talk about your striving to be unique. Is the concept of the Enneagram, and even like the conversation of like, let's learn what it's like to be a 4. Is that a little bit like you want to push back against the Enneagram? For saying this is who you are, kind of a thing?
Yeah. The first time I heard about the Enneagram, I was like, okay. No thanks. For that. I don't know if it's like a conscious thing, though, like the whole you don't get me sort of thing. I think it's just kind of, I don't know, just in all of subconsciously everywhere.
Well, you know? It's almost like I'm way more complex.
Yeah.
Than this thing could ever describe me.
Totally.
This thing doesn't get me.
Yeah.
And there's like that pushback there.
But the more I learn about it, the more I like see it's like, oh, there's so much more than just like the number thing. Or like, it was the same with like Myers-Briggs or whatever. It's like, okay, sure, that like gets you like 1 inch below the surface. And, you know what I mean? But the more I'm learning about the Enneagram, I'm like, oh, like that's, I don't know. There's just so much more room than I thought there was.
When you were saying the like, you know, when something is trending and you're like, I'm not doing that anymore. It just got me thinking that a lot of innovation though comes from 4s then.
Sure.
If you're constantly being like,
totally.
Well, here's the bell curve is like going up and this is what's trending now. it's the 4s that are going to take that. And to me, it seems like, and they're going to figure out, what is this next trend?
Yeah.
And then as soon as that becomes trendy, then they have to drop it and figure something else out. But there's almost like this, there's almost like this innovation that comes with 4s. I don't know if that resonates with either of you guys, like kind of, and maybe that's what it means by like intense creative, right? Being creative. Do you guys resonate with the innovation spurring and that creativity piece?
I mean, absolutely. I think I walk through life and I see possibilities everywhere and I can't turn it off. And I'm always like, should I do that? Or should I do that? Or should I do that? And it's, I can't do it all, obviously, but that sense of like, I need to focus and not want to constantly create on everything.
Yeah, I'll often ask this is going to sound so dumb, but here we go. Like, I really like clothes, but I don't want to be wearing what everybody else is wearing. You know what I mean? So I'm like, but I don't want to be like super weird. You know what I mean? So like,
you don't want to wear something that's just so crazy just because it's so crazy.
Yeah, because that itself, it's like you're a tryhard, and that's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, I'll often ask myself, it's like, what do I feel like is like me, but like also like the next thing. Like, what if, you know what I mean? Like being on top of, or like being before everybody. It's like that classic hipster. It's like, oh, I listened to them before they were cool.
Right.
Or I listened to them before they blew up and headlined Red Rocks. I don't know. But yeah, definitely this, and that's like, that's not innovation. That's just me being like weird. But I often will think, it's like, dude, what is next for like worship music, or what is next for our church when it comes to the way that we, I don't know. I'm often asking that. It's like, what's next? What's next? What's next? Because, like I said, I have issues with trends.
A lot of, it's interesting. I mean, we're going to get into this in a minute, but a lot of things that you have already said make me lean one way in one of the subtypes over another. So we'll get to it and see if you resonate with it later.
Cool.
Well, what's interesting is knowing both of you guys for a while. I see that uniqueness in both of you. I see the creativity. I see all those things. But I also see a tremendous loyalty. Like, you guys are not like, I'm over this, I'm out of here. When it comes to either commitment to a church through difficult times, or there's just this sense of stick with it. I don't know if that has something to do with 4. You know what I mean? I think sometimes artists in general, or maybe through the lens of the Enneagram, the 4s are considered, well, like, oh my goodness, it's like every day up and down, and they start something and they quit something and all that kind of stuff. And that, I don't see that with you guys. I don't know if that's a typical 4 thing. If it's, yes, there is this desire to create, desire to innovate, but it's also not this complete, like, I'm getting rid of everything that was important to me at one point. And maybe that's just because of the work that you guys have done. I'm not sure. But I'm curious, is there anything else you would add to the general conversation of what it's like to
be a 4?
Yeah.
I kind of say sometimes to friends jokingly that I'm like a giant nerve ending. Like, I walk through life and I notice inflection and color. Like I feel like I see more color than other people, and just noise and environment, and it's just all the nuances. I just feel like it's all coming at me, and I've been super sensitive to that my whole life.
Well, I could see that being a blessing and a curse.
Yes, it's tiring. I was wondering if 4s are more tired than other numbers. But yes.
So did you have a similar struggle with the Enneagram at first?
Maybe. I think I kind of always knew I was a 4, but I didn't want to be a 4. I wrestle also with maybe I was a 9, because I do make a lot of peace with people. But yeah, I'm pretty emotional.
Okay.
It's just what it is.
Luke, did you think I'm a 4 right away?
No, I thought I was a 7. And then I thought I was an 8.
Okay.
Because, I don't know, people just kind of told me that. Like, they're like, oh, you're probably a 7, or you're probably, that sort of thing. And then I started.
There's a lesson in that too. We shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
To people.
Yeah. And then I thought it was an 8, just by I think I was confusing it because I'm just so very like passionate and like very like I'm all driven and like, you know what I mean? I have like so much of, I don't know.
It's like fire and intensity.
Fire,
That's ready to go.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So I was like, oh, then I'm probably an 8. And then everyone's like, no, you're not. You know, like, so yeah, it was kind of, I didn't know like right off the bat. It's like, oh, I'm definitely a 4. I know that I'm creative and I know that I'm emotional. But yeah.
Well, some of the things that you said from the beginning, first episode, Mitch, is we can all relate to every single one of the numbers.
We all have all 9 types.
Yeah.
Of numbers inside of us, and so that's what adds to the complexity of who we are. But there's always one of those that is the dominant that we live out of, and that drives our motivation.
Yeah. And the 8 side could be like, well, yeah, because you have the ability to stand up and to be strong and say, this is where we're going to go. And, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, oh yeah, see some of those 8 tendencies. But
again, one of the subtypes is often mistyped as an 8. And so there's that as well.
Gotcha. Well, that's a great segue. Why don't you start walking us through, and just like we did in the last episode, let's talk about one.
I'm going to give a quick overview of the 3, and then we'll dive into self-preservation.
That's great.
Is that cool? So just a quick overview of the 3 subtypes. So there's self-preservation, there's social, and then there's one-to-one. And again, when those different instincts are mixed with the Enneagram 4, we get 3 different looking versions of a 4. And that's one of the important reasons why we're even doing the subtype work, is because you can't just say, well, all 4s are blah, 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 blah. No, it's not true. It's just not true. And so here's a little illustration or a hook to help us understand and wrap our brains around a little difference between each one. The self-preservation 4 typically is running away from emotions. They have them. They have this sense of suffering, but they don't want to acknowledge those emotions. And so they're actually running from those emotions and trying to engage in the suffering of other people to help others. And then you have the social 4, and they're not running from emotions. They're actually hiding in their emotions. They have a lot of intense emotions, and they're the ones that will often say like, I don't have feelings. I am my feelings. They can't have a hard time differentiating from all of the feelings. They're all there. I can't turn it off. And so they really sit in that suffering and want other people to recognize their struggle and what they're going through. And then you have the one-to-one 4, and they're not running from emotions. They're not hiding in their emotions. They're expressing intense emotions. And they're really doing this because they want to be proven as, I am the unique one. I have all, and they are going to go after it as hard as they can and as fast as they can with as much intensity as they can to show like, I am the best, and the most unique. And so that's like quick.
So can I interrupt? So before we get to the actual subtypes, because you talked about this relationship with emotions, I'd love to throw out the thing I heard in an interview that made me think maybe I'm an Enneagram 4. I think it was also a fairly like reflective season of my life. So I was like looking inside a ton. And I heard a 4 that was interviewed, and he gave a story or an illustration. I'll tell you that in a minute. But he said this quote. He said, "I feel emotions recreationally."
That's good.
And I was like, I think I can relate to that. And this is the story he told. He said he was a musician. So he was on a tour bus, and he said he brought it up with his the tour mates, and he said, well, whenever we pass a car accident, I will think and reflect on that car accident for a long time afterwards, and I start to feel like, what is the family feeling like right now? What is the officer that's showing up and he just starts like putting on all of those emotions and like feeling them legitimately. He's like, you know how you do that? And everyone's like, no, we do not. And I was like, I do that. And like that specific thing. And that's why that was a season where I was like, maybe I'm a 4. I think for me, so we can get back to me for a minute, was more like the 6, the what if scenario. So those tragic events, it's like it's like, what if? So if I'm in that situation, how would I handle that? If I was the parent showing up at the scene and the son or daughter's in the accident, what would I do? So that was the motivation. That was the angle, I think, that I experienced those things. But that was the phrase. So I said that I feel emotions recreationally. It sounded like that resonated with you guys. Does that sound familiar at all? The concept?
Yes. Let me tell you my dynamic in my marriage. So well, my favorite thing to do is like to go on a road trip, especially where I know I'm going somewhere beautiful and I'll get to take photographs and I get to just be in the car and think my thoughts, the whole thing. I'm feeling recreationally. Here's my husband. He's at Enneagram 1. We talked about that a couple podcasts ago. He's disciplined. He's frugal. He's the man with the plan. He's navigating. He's driving. He's doing all the things. He looks over at me. He sees me doing nothing. And, his frugality over time has compounded into the very beautiful life that I enjoy. But he'll be like, hey, can you get out, gas buddy, and find some, the cheapest gas in the next 20 miles? And I'm like, I'm thinking about archetypes or philosophy or whatever it is. And I feel victimized that I have to leave that space in my head and come and do such a mundane thing to save 30 cents. And I mean, it's like, seriously, dude, I want to feel my feelings recreationally right now.
So you can relate.
I so can relate.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's funny. I don't know if I do that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you said something earlier. It's like I don't feel emotions. I am my feelings.
Yeah.
I don't have feelings. I am my feelings. I feel like I just am my feelings. And so there's no like whatever I'm in is just 100 out of 100. And I can't just go somewhere, if that makes sense, because what I'm experiencing in that moment is everything. And so like, say, I don't know, maybe I'm like having the best day of my life. Me and my wife are going downtown. We're going to get some food. Like we're just having a great day. I drive past a car accident. And it's like, I'm not there. And I'm not going to dwell on that. Like, because I'm in my thing 100%. And so it might.
Okay, but can I provide a caveat though? I think people like in your circle, when they're going through a hard time, it seems like you feel that with them.
That's a good point. Totally.
Is that true?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I feel like I can go there with anyone. Like you're in the depths, I'm ready to go to.
Right.
But recreationally, I don't turn anything on or off. Like I can't just be like, you know what, some people it's like, I just listen to sad music and cry. It's like, if I'm there, I'll do it. But because my emotion, I just am my feelings. I don't know if this is maybe, I don't know. It doesn't feel authentic to go somewhere.
Yeah. Like that makes sense.
Recreationally. But I don't know, maybe we're not hearing that the same way, but
yeah, it makes sense. All right,
let's dive into self-pres.
Yep, let's do it.
So the self-pres subtype, they really set themselves apart from other 4s by being very tenacious and goal-oriented, actively seeking out what they believe is missing in their life. They have this sense, but they're going to work really hard to try to get that thing that's out there. And so here are a couple things you need to know about the self-pres 4s. And the first one is they have a fearless pursuit. Sometimes it's, even discussed as like a little bit even reckless pursuit. And so their actions are very clear and bold, and they seem very fearless in everything they do. And they strive to be unique and independent from other people. They achieve great things, but at the same time, achieving great things, it never feels like enough for them. And that feeling of abundance that they crave is always just on the other side of the hill. And so I need to pursue that thing. And this can also, they're also willing, that tenacity piece, they're willing to work as hard as they can and to try to prove themselves. And then they try to get, even in difficult situations, and even if they've overcommitted, they want to do it without complaining at all. And even when they feel this like sense of frustration that's going on inside of them, they really try to mask it all with a sense of lightheartedness and being friendly and having a really upbeat attitude. Some people actually refer to the self-pres as more of like the sunshiny version of a 4, whereas the other two subtypes of 4s can be more melancholy. Whereas this one is more sunshiny because they're trying to put those emotions to the side in pursuit of that thing that they feel like is just outside their reach. Mm-hmm. So that fearless pursuit, they also mentioned this briefly earlier, but the focus on the suffering of other people, they're really a champion for other people of people who are in need, they view are oppressed, people who are struggling, people who are suffering, and they may focus on the suffering of others, but in order to detach from their own pain, to put that pain and that suffering aside in pursuit of helping other people and throwing themselves into the service of others. And then the last thing is that envy leads to work. They have this envious thing of this thing that's missing, and so they pursue it. And they notice that other people have what they don't have, and so they pursue it with everything. So effort for them is very comforting, even if the effort that they're using right now doesn't go anywhere. It's okay because they believe that motion helps them escape from themselves, from those hurtful emotions, so they can stay more on the sunny side and push through, and have that tenacity to push through.
I love these conversations because that's just, I feel like I know about the 4s from different stuff but then you hear that subtype and you're like, that is so interesting.
This is the counter type. I don't think I said that, but this is the counter type, which is the 4 that can not look like a 4. Okay. This 4 is often mistyped as a 3 or a 7 because they are so gung-ho about achieving goals and objectives and pushing through to get what they want.
Mm-hmm. Driven.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'd love to pause and be like, how does that sit with you guys? Because I'd love to do that for each of these 3 subtypes. And it's okay if it's like, I don't know, but I'd love to know your thoughts.
There's so much there. Do you have anything, Susan?
I identify as a self-pres 4.
Okay.
So a lot of that resonates with me. I never consider myself driven, but sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, I am like in 6 groups. Maybe that's too many. There are things like that, but I don't see that as maybe too much in the moment.
So you're in 6 small groups?
Well, I am a groups director.
Right, but just to clarify.
I am also a groups director, and I'm currently in 1 group.
Okay.
I've currently narrowed it down to a few less. But
how many?
I think I'm at 4.
Okay.
So,
pretty good. Progress.
Yeah, progress. Yeah. The word driven doesn't necessarily relate, but there's a lot of times where I'm like, maybe I am doing too much.
Gotcha.
For sure.
I think correct me if I'm wrong, but it's that championing of others. You want to make sure that they feel like they're connected, and you don't want them to suffer or be out or whatever. And you're like, I will do whatever it takes to make sure that they are connected, and they don't suffer, and they don't feel shunned, and they don't feel on the outside.
Yes. That is probably a good part of my motivation. So, gosh, what else did you say that really resonated with me? There was something about being like kind of not reckless. I don't think that was the word you used, but fearless. I find myself in situations that I'm like, wow, I can't believe I'm here. Why did I say yes to this?
Like in certain situations, you find yourself like, oh, what? How did I even get to this moment?
Yes.
Or what? Yeah.
Yeah. Just, I don't think of myself as having like a lot of, I don't know, audacity, but then I'll do things other people are like, no way would I do that. Even if it's driving along a cliff that I happen to be along a lot, but
Yeah.
For me, I think the thing that resonated with me the most was effort. I just try really hard on whatever I think is important. And I think I'm just kind of putting some pieces together. You're talking about how like, I don't have this thing, and so I'm going to go after that thing. And I think effort makes me feel good. Like when I'm not, like I practice guitar all the time. I don't need to. I don't really have a reason to, but I like practice guitar all the time. I practice singing all the time. And when I'm practicing, I feel good. Like when I'm putting the whole effort thing that you were talking about, it's like that feels good, because I think deep down, it's like, I'm just really insecure about these things. And it's like, I'm comparing myself to this person, comparing myself to this person. And so it's like, well, if I want to be like that person, why don't you just like grind and like get good?
Is it because, do you think it's because you ultimately, you want to be the best?
Yes.
Go at that.
Yeah, totally.
In comparing with this other person, that is actually pushing you to be the best.
Yeah, totally. And it's been a journey for me, like all throughout like high school, and like all I did was practice guitar. I'm like, I'm going to be one of the best in the world at guitar. And then now I'm 30, and it's like, I know that like I can play guitar, like, and I know that I'm like more than capable to do whatever, but like, I am not the best, you know what I mean? And so that's been a journey of like, that's okay, bro. That's okay. But there's still things inside of me where it's like, now the thing that I'm focusing on is like, I want to be an amazing worship leader. I want to do a really, really good job on Sunday mornings. I want to speak well. I want to sing well. I want to lead this team really, like, I want to just, all the effort goes here now. You know what I mean? And so that piece of what you just said, definitely.
And it sounds like there's almost like a competitive spirit in there as well.
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm like competing against my coworkers or whatever, but it's just this thing where it's like
competing to be that you want to become the best.
Yeah. And even hearing you say that, it's like, I mean, that just sounds like almost goofy, because it's like the best, like, you know what I mean? But like, I don't know. There's just something about it that seems a little,
when you say it out loud, it's like, I know why you're, but I think, it's good to be just like raw with someone. It's like, this is a motivator.
Totally.
That I want to be. Maybe a caveat that you put to that is like, I want to be the best that I possibly can. However, I've seen you put so much energy into those things that it's like leaps and bounds. Yeah. So I hear what you're saying as far as like, now that I say that a few times, I'm not claiming I'm the best.
No, you're totally.
Right.
Yeah.
But, and again, so the self-preservation is really about trying to get away from certain feelings in terms of throwing themselves into the effort. Like that effort is motivated for seeing other people in need, really. And how do I make sure that I can pull them out of their suffering? And there's almost this like different view. It's not as much about being the best, but in doing that though, they're still trying to find that missing, and they're on that way for that missing piece too.
Yeah. Mine feels more internal than that. Yeah. Mine doesn't feel like outward like that.
No, mine is definitely like, I don't want to feel my emotions, because if they're out there, I know they're too much for people, and I actually want people to like me. So there was, I was telling Mitch this earlier. He was with me when we went to Kenya this past year, and we had a flight from Nairobi to Frankfurt, and it was just a bad flight for me. I did not sleep at all, and and then you get off and you have to stand in line and you can't use the bathroom, and I was just like, I said to Joel, who was on the episode a couple times ago, and he's of course an Enneagram 1. I'm like, I'm starting to feel like I'm going to get melodramatic. And he said, just don't. He was team lead, by the way. So I had to obey.
Don't.
But,
and you looked at him, you're like, thank you.
Thank you for reeling me in. But,
I just needed someone to say, don't.
Don't. Yes. But there is that sense. I, for a while also was like, am I a 6? Cause I over prepare for things for my comfort. And it is so that I'm comfortable so that I don't get, so my emotions won't go out of control. So, I mean, I'm ready with Advil and protein bars, so I'm not hangry, and cardigans, so I'm not cold. And
so it almost sounds like you're trying to prepare yourself to not get to an emotional spot.
Right.
You're trying to insulate that from others.
No one wants me to go down an emotional path if I don't need to.
Anything else on the self-pres?
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Some rich conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. So the second one is the social, and this subtype really wants to be unique and appreciated for their struggles and for their suffering. Again, this is the hiding in their emotion. And three things you need to know about the social 4 is that they have a high emotional awareness. Their emotional capacity and sensitivity, they're just so aware of the currents I don't know if this will make any sense to any other numbers but 4, but like they're aware of the emotional currents inside themselves and in between them and other people and them and the group. They just get all of that, which makes them incredibly empathetic towards people. When you're talking about the person on that interview, that's just like, they're going in with these other people and they're just thinking through probably a social 4, just really like empathetic and sees it, and they're suffering and they're going in there with the suffering, or maybe even a self-pres. They see that and they're like, oh, how do I alleviate that suffering? That's more of a self-pres, but the social, they'll sit in those emotions with other people. And they believe that this empathy, this high emotional awareness is a big piece of what makes them unique and makes them special, because they can feel things and sense things that nobody else can. And that's what makes them truly, truly unique. And they are connected to all their feelings, define themselves by their emotions rather than the approval or support of others. It's like, that doesn't matter to me as much as all the feelings that are going on inside of me. And they believe that having what others have will actually bring them happiness. But then they also think, if I end up getting the things that I think will make me happy, then I'm not special or unique anymore, because now I'm just like everybody else. And so it's almost this vicious cycle of like, I want what my happiness is over there, but I can't get it, because if I get it, then I'm not special or unique anymore. And so they sit in that, but they're highly emotionally aware, also very creative and intelligent, capable, typically attractive. They want to be seen. They want to have this kind of a unique persona, and not just for persona's sake, but to really express who they are. And so I think that comes in, Luke, a little bit with what you're saying earlier about just this innovation, and this like creative sense. And you mentioned the clothes thing a little bit too. And so they have a lot of that, but they can be extremely hard on themselves in the midst of that, because they think, oh, maybe I'm not creative enough, or I'm not intelligent enough. And so they have a tendency to beat themselves up, and then they can begin to doubt themselves, and it can lead to almost like, and I am inferior to other people. It can lead to some of those things and become more melancholy in the way they approach life. And then the third thing to know about social 4s is that they're comfortable in suffering. And they actually try to magnify their struggles and their suffering that they're going through to try to bring people in to be like, this is how I'm going to fit into this social group, is by saying, man, here are my struggles, and they use that almost to try to relate to other people of like, man, I'm struggling. Aren't you struggling? And we're going through this together. And it's almost how they approach other people. And they really want people to notice them, note in their suffering and in their struggle, and to acknowledge it and to understand, like go in there with them and sit in there with them. And so anyway, so that's a quick overview of the social 4.
Yeah. How does that sit with you guys?
So it's like Van Gogh rather than, Thomas Kincaid.
Yes,
okay.
Precisely.
But are you talking about like the
unpack that analogy?
Let's cut off my ear and lament rather than the
Make the
painter of like a
beautiful-
fairy tale painting.
is Kincaid the painter of light?
Yes.
Is that one of his nicknames? Okay.
Yeah.
Is it just more inauthentic? It's just kind of what would you
What
say?
makes me
What
think,
do you-
I don't know if tell me if this is right. One of the descriptors you used for self-pres was sunshiny, more that sunshiny type. If you're using those two examples of those painters, it's like this is idyllic, it's beautiful, but it is very like everyone that looks at this is going to enjoy it.
I mean, Van Gogh, genius. The artist formerly known as Prince.
Right.
Got to be a 4, right?
I would think so.
I mean, Luke's nodding over here.
Yeah.
Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah.
Gotcha.
A little bit dark. There's a darkness. They're sitting in the dark side of life a little bit more.
So can you relate to that social subtype?
Yes, and I know some. There was this funny meme that was going around in 2020, which is why it's funny because it talks about being asymptomatic. But it was this picture of this man sitting on a dock looking over the water. And those 70s portraits where there's like your own face superimposed looking back at you. And it's looking back at him and he's gazing out of the water and he's like, maybe I'm happy. I'm just asymptomatic. And it's just so funny. Every 4 I've read that too is just like, I'm dead. That is 100% what it's like.
That's funny. But that may be it. Would that be okay to borrow that meme? Is that maybe one of the subtypes that's a little bit less in tune with their emotions? If it's like maybe I'm happy, I'm just asymptomatic. Like this just sense of
it's not in touch. It's not being in the social 4 is very in touch with their emotions.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the person that wrote the meme?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think it's just a self-absorbed moment of wondering and
Melancholy.
it's that melancholy. And I think for the social 4, happiness does seem out of reach to them. It does seem like I know it's out there and I know I can feel it, but I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've definitely had seasons like that. Yeah. But I feel like, I don't know if it's because I'm that or because of life circumstance.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But there have definitely been seasons where like, it's just a cloud. Like I'm just in a cloud of my melancholy, my emotions, my like this sort of darkness. And it's just it's like, dude, I don't know if I'm ever getting out of here. I don't know if I can, I think that was more depression. And I think that was more like less personality and more like mental health. But it's definitely a seasonal thing for me where it's like, would someone just come down here with me for a second and just, often like my wife is also a 4. But often like even like this last Friday I was at home and I've just been in like a funk. I've just been feeling just like, I don't know, very, just a funk, like sad and just like somber, like that thing, like that happiness is like, I don't know, dude. I don't know. I just don't know anymore. And what I want from her is to be like, I want her to come down there with me and be like, man, like, what is this right now? And she's like, will you just tell me what's going on? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I just know that it doesn't feel good. And so I'm way more in touch with like the way it feels than like what's actually happening. And I feel like to other personalities, sometimes they're like, well, can't you just see the problem and fix the problem?
Just stop feeling and get over it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm definitely familiar with the depths. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, let's keep going.
All right. So the last one is the one-to-one.
Yeah.
And so this isn't the running away from, this isn't hiding in, this is expressing intense emotion. And this subtype most visibly strives to set themselves apart from others by focusing on how they are different and even competing to be the single special one. A couple things you need to know about the 1-to-1 4 is that, number one, they're competitive. They are competent, they're energetic, they're impulsive, competitive. They work hard at being the best and achieving their goals, and they can be very bold visionaries of seeing that what's next to come and then going after that thing. But their competitiveness is rooted in a need to measure themselves against others. That's where the envy comes in. I'm measuring myself against you, so that makes me try harder, makes me bulk up and go after things, and to have what they have, because they believe that what they have, that's the best, and I need to strive to be that also. And then they have a very particularly like black and white approach to success. Either I'm 100% and I have achieved this and I've succeeded, or everything I did is meaningless, worthless, purposeless. Why did I even try in the first place? And so there's there's not much gray area in the success there. And so that's the first thing is very competitive. Second one is emotionally intense. They are very comfortable with intense emotions, and they tend to be more blunt and outspoken than any of the other 4s. They're not quite as warm. They have a hard time with warmth than generosity, because it's more about like, I just need to tell you what it is. And I was talking to another, a 1-to-1 person who identifies as a 1-to-1 4, and they're like, I don't feel emotions on like 1 to 10. It's like 15 all the time. I feel it all and very intensely, and I can't even explain to you how intense this is.
And is that only negative emotions, or is it the same with the positive emotions?
No, everything is just heightened.
Okay.
Yeah, very intense.
Mm-hmm. So when life is
emotions.
good, they are doing good.
And what they want a not 100%.
Yeah, with that same intensity.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And they have no problem expressing their anger and confronting other people. In fact, a lot of the intensity actually manifests itself more as anger, or other people experience that. This is the subtype that can be mistyped as an 8. And then what's also interesting though, with all the emotional intensity, is that they're not actually particularly concerned about the image they portray. But when someone has criticism for them, they really experience it as a personal attack against them, even though they're trying to portray this like tough exterior shell of like, I don't care. They still get real. It's very personal to them when there's criticism and feedback and those kinds of things. So competitive, emotional intensity. And then the last one is assertive, very, very assertive. They tend to believe that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and this can lead to a vicious cycle of like, I know what I want, and then demanding that this thing is given. And then people act negatively in response to just the more of it coming across as a demand. And then they become, the 4 can become then even more assertive and more intense, which then increases the intensity of the reaction of the other person, and then more intensity. And then it's just this vicious cycle of intensity back and forth where nothing really gets resolved. And so they can be incredibly just this aggressive presence in pursuing what they want and pursuing their goals and trying to be the best.
Yeah. I could see that really paying off well as
what's that bold visionary?
Yeah.
They see it and they're going to go after it. Yeah.
So it could make that person very successful because it's like they're accomplishing things.
Yep.
And also could get them in those tension points with people. And but it doesn't seem to bother that subtype as much as maybe the self-pres. You said something also in the social. I'll come back to it because I want to stay on one-to-one. But I do have a question about social and self-preservation in comparison. But I would love to know how that sits with you, hearing about the one-to-one.
Dude, I feel like that's me. I feel like I've had to work really hard on the whole demanding thing or the vision for a thing and the conflict thing, because I feel like there have been just seasons of ministry, and every meeting I'm blowing up because somebody like wasn't on my like idea, and it's like, no, this is what we need to do. I see everything and you're just not seeing it the way that I see it. So I get like amped up, and then you're amped up, but then my feelings explode and yours don't. And so like I leave this emotional
wake
everywhere. And in the same thing with criticism, like I have to try so hard to make it constructive, because rarely
when you're giving it or receiving
it. Okay. When I'm receiving any sort of criticism, I have to be like, bro, they love you, and this is actually going to make you better. But there's a thing inside of me that's like, oh, dude, like that's personal.
Yeah.
So you said competitive, like the whole measuring thing. It's just pretty much everything you said was like, yeah, I'm so in on that. That's me. The emotional intensity, I think, is the biggest thing for me. The 15 out of 10 all the time. Yeah, I just don't know how to turn it off, you know, you know? But yeah, dude, I
was interested. What did you think about the success being more like black and white? Either I am the best, or what I just did was worthless and meaningless.
I think if I wasn't surrounded by awesome people with awesome perspective, I would be constantly disappointed. Just disappointed at all times, because there are certain things that's like, you know, I wish our songs were doing this on Spotify streams. Yeah. I wish that, you know, this album, whatever, these songs that we write, these our Sunday morning gatherings, I wish it was this, I wish it was this. And I just think it takes, like if I was just like unfiltered, raw, I'm like, what are we even doing?
Yeah.
You know? But because I'm surrounded by people who are not like me, it's easier to see. It's like there is success everywhere. But it's really hard for me to see it as that. Because like, oh, we have so much work to do to get to where we want to go, wherever that is.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, it's hard to celebrate little wins, because it's like, but imagine if we were winning like this, or imagine if we were like, if we're in 5th place, imagine if we're in 1st place, or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, that might be a good practice for you. Maybe you already do this, but after each thing where you're tempted to see the negative and be disappointed in a thing, like literally write out what are 1, 2, or 3 wins that actually came from this.
Yeah.
That could be a really good practice for you, just to continue to try to see, oh man, there is this blessing
totally
coming out of this.
I love debriefing, because I can hear people's perspective that, like, you know, often Nick and I will get off stage and I was like, dude, I don't know, I was feeling this. And Nick's like, oh, dude, what? No, you're off on that, because actually this, and this were happening, and it was epic. You know what I mean? I love to debrief, because often I'll like just be, dude, I'm just in my head.
I was going to say, does that help get you out of your own head?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, I love the meetings on Monday. It's like, how did Sunday go? And they're like, dude, this happened in the lobby and this happened. It's like, bro, this is awesome. You know?
It's good.
Susan, I'm curious.
There's a quote that I love as an Enneagram 4, and it's by St. Irenaeus, and he says something like, "The glory of God is man fully alive." And just thinking about the intensity of 4s, I mean, if they're in a really healthy place, it just seems like they would be really, really alive, like so deeply alive. That's kind of cool.
Well, I've seen it in both of you guys. It's like if people are going through a really difficult time, you are great people to talk to. If people are going through an awesome time that they want to celebrate, you are great people to go to. Like there's this, we will celebrate with you. I've heard you say this countless times with people, whether it's a student that just got accepted to a college or a job, you're like, are you kidding me? Like you celebrate, big. You'll show up at people's houses and, whatever, cook them dinner, invite them for a meal, and you want to celebrate with them. There is that ability to, I know all the subtypes are a little bit different, that ability to experience those emotions and go with people, whether it's highs or lows. I love that. I'm curious, when you hear the one-to-one, how does that, because you already said that you identify more with that self-preservation.
Definitely.
How does that feel when you hear the one-to-one? Does that just feel foreign to you?
That's probably where I would go next. I love really deep conversations with people. And when I do feel an emotion, it's pretty big. Those were the two. I try to hide the melancholy for a select few, mainly Andy, my husband. And so I'm definitely, I would say that would be my order. If that's a thing.
Kind of that stacking.
So can you explain that again? What the stacking?
Yeah. So we've talked about this in some previous podcasts, but even there's 3 different instincts, and so we actually have an order. There's one that you're primarily operate out of, and again, these instincts are like what help us survive. So Susan, you mentioned self-preservation would be your first one. And then we have a tendency to swing to one of the other 2 or utilize one of the other 2 to actually help us survive in certain situations. And so you're saying, maybe that one-to-one is the second one. And then there's typically one you don't resonate with almost at all. And that's kind of your repressed subtype. And so you might say like that social of just sitting in the suffering, because that is actually, that's very counter to what a self-pres wants to do anyway. And then there is, I have seen, there is some of that competition inside of you too, of like, you want to be the best, you want to go after it. And so there is that, I could see that working with you. Yeah.
Do you have one that feels the most foreign?
Probably the social.
The social.
Yeah, I think the thing about the self-pres was like the sunshininess. I feel like I have that.
People are, I would imagine, are shocked to hear that you were depressed.
Right.
Because it's like, man, you put on such a positive face, and in a big group, you usually most energetic and what's up, everybody? And it's just happy, intense. Is that what you're talking about?
Totally. Yep. And so the social, though I can relate to some things, it definitely feels like out of those 3, that's probably the least that I resonate with. Yeah.
And to the point that we keep coming back to in this series is how different people in the same type can be. And a couple of things. This is what I was talking about a minute ago: social versus self-pres. You're saying the self-pres has this sunshiny. It's like, I want people to look at me and not think I'm going to overwhelm them with my emotions. I want to put on a good face. And then you said the social. One phrase you said was emotions are greater than approval. It's like me being authentic to those emotions is far more important than whether you approve of me or not. Absolutely. And that seems like such a difference, right? Such a contrast. And I think that's why this work is so important, to dig into it, because it's like, okay, there could be 2 4s, or there could be 3 different 4s that look very, very different from one another in little nuances. You can relate to one another. You can understand. It's like we're speaking the same language, but it's still really unique.
Well, and Luke, if your stacking of instincts was one-to-one, then social, then self-pres, people may not describe you as this sunshiny. You might be more in like, hey, even more in the trenches of emotion, even more. But there is with the self-pres being the second one that you resonate with, it's like, oh, I'm trying to stave some of that off and hold it for certain people.
Yeah. The thing about that is like, and it's weird because like, I want to be so honest at all times, but I feel like not everybody gets to have that. I feel like it's not healthy for me to be in like the position of leadership that I'm in. And it's like, I don't think it's good if you know all the things I'm feeling. So it's kind of what you were saying. It's like the sunshininess, like though it may feel like I'm acting, which is my worst nightmare. Like I hate doing things that don't feel like
authentic.
Me. Yeah. I hate it. But there's also a thing, and it maybe just because of like where I'm at in like this church or whatever, but it's like, I still feel all of those things, but it's like, dude, I cannot let you in on that. And Nick and I, we've been talking a lot lately, and I'm almost like, dude, I'm just not going to say anything because the way that I feel X, Y, and Z, it's like, because this is, and Nick's like, well, don't do that. He's like, don't like not say anything. But that's kind of how I feel sometimes.
You're talking about like disagreements at work, or it's like, I have a different opinion. You would say, I'm just going to bite my tongue on that. It's like, well, that's not good because we need to hear that opinion.
Yes, because it's so huge to me. And often it'll come off as like, bro, whoa.
Well, I wonder.
Just chill for a second. But it's like, to me, it's like this big. And so sometimes it's scary for me to like open up that little hatch because it's just going to fly out,
And you don't want to, maybe this is a learned thing too, of like, you don't want to appear just that demanding, aggressive, increasingly raising intensity with the other person. So you're like, fine, I just won't express anything.
Right.
Is it to try to avoid that from happening?
For sure. It's definitely a reaction to what I've done in the past. It's like, I just don't want to do that anymore. And so it definitely, part of it feels unnatural because again, it's like, I hate anything that's not just, I hate the filter. But I feel like it's better because even if on the inside, I'm like boiling, it's like, dude, I don't need to throw that boiling water on people. And so it's just something that I am learning right now. And it's just hard for me, but I think I'm getting better at it and just like letting it cool down, but it is 15 out of 10 at all times. So you're saying something and it's like, dude, I am so not on board with that. It's the gray area is just weird for me because there's not, you were talking about gray area in terms of success. I feel like there's just, I don't know, just the whole black and white nature of my personality. It just feels like everything is on or everything is off. And so when it comes to like the sunshininess, it's like, well, this is the version you're going to get right now because I cannot let you in on that. So
I would love to change gears and talk about growth. And you guys, I know you've done a lot of work. So I would love to hear from you the things that you've done that have been helpful. And it doesn't have to be Enneagram jargon. It could just be therapy or whatever. But I'm curious to kind of get the ball rolling is what is it about the gospel? What is it about the message of Jesus that you have found particularly to be helpful as a 4?
I think I said this to you, both of you the other day, just that sense of being at the table. I'm working on the Pursuit Journal and I'm in Revelation and thinking about the table, the banquet table, at the end. And it's like we bring ourselves, our shabby selves, our the parts of us that are vile or that need healing, and we get to sit at this table and he heals us. And then he gives us white gowns, and then he gives us each other, and he gives us eternal life, and he gives us, it's just like and at this banquet. And when I'm in my lamentable states, or I'm like, woe is me, this sense of gratitude, like if I can go to that, like that's what the gospel is. What on earth am I so upset about? And that gratitude just puts it all in perspective. And then the gospel is so good to just raise me up out of that and out of myself and ready to give again. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's all. That is great.
Yeah.
Luke, how'd you answer?
I don't know. Like there's so much about the gospel that is just like so unique. And there's something about it that's just like, this is just incredible how Jesus like meets people in those crazy places of darkness. And whenever I'm like reading just the life of Jesus, those moments where he is like down in the dirt with the woman caught in adultery, or when the friends like punch a hole through the roof and put the paralyzed man in front of Jesus, like I always resonate with the broken, like the person who is like so undeserving of like this thing that Jesus has for them. And I'm just like blown away, because it's like, oh, I was that paralyzed man, metaphorically or whatever. It's like I was caught in my sin metaphorically, and Jesus, he sits there, and he's like, bro, like I'm here for you. Like I have forgiveness for you. I have acceptance for you. Like I have so much more than this brokenness for you. And that, like kind of what you were saying, it's like he lifts us out of that thing. And I don't know, dude, that's just kind of what, like it's hard for me right now for some reason to like see the forness in the gospel, but I think this is just what I love about the gospel.
Well, and maybe I didn't ask the question well, but it's just like when you experience emotions like you experience, when you view the world like you view the world, what is so helpful about the gospel? And I think you answered it.
Yeah.
It was that Savior that's not like in the pristine tower looking down like, I'll save you. It's like he is
in
right
the dirt
there with you.
Yeah, totally.
Undaunted. And he's not flinching. He's not embarrassed. It's all those kinds of things. That's like, oh, you get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
Like-
judging, and sees you for you in your suffering in this moment, and doesn't go away and sits with you there.
Right. Yeah. And that itself is very intense. Like just in terms of like what's natural for us, it's like we run away from that. And to be in that with me, who's experiencing this, that, or whatever, and he's just there. There's just something so insane and incredible about that, about the gospel, about who Jesus is, where he's like, dude, we're here. Yeah.
Well, there are these shadows of faith and religion that we've embraced in America over the last several decades. And some of them would look like you need to have your Sunday best on, and you need to have your life figured out, and your spouse is perfect and your kids are perfect. And it's like almost approaching God like, we're good. Like we're acceptable to you. And I could see that sense of facade or that sense of fakeness just being just like, I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
But the reality that we have a God that's saying, no. Well, first of all, I can see through all of that. But I still like you, and I still want you with me. There's something really, really freeing in that.
Dude, that's so good.
I would love, and Mitch, and keep in mind, I'd love to know any other practical advice or tips for someone who's saying, I do want to grow. I want to be a healthier version of myself. But I'm curious from you guys, what have you found to be helpful in your life to say, and it's not necessarily as a four, but just as people, what has been helpful to you to be a healthier version of who you are?
I mean, I definitely need alone time to process all my thoughts and then kind of slow it down a little bit, not get so emotional about everything. Put it on paper, reread it. Is this true? Is this helpful? Is this reality?
But you just got to get it out.
I do
really,
have to get
honestly.
it out. And my journal, if you were to read it, it looks like a schizophrenic wrote it. I mean, it is not like disciplined with the date and the, in order. I just, whatever blank page I open it to, it's a mess. But so it's as scattered as what's going on in here, the swirl, but it gets it down.
And then you ask yourself, is this true? There's a couple.
Yeah. Is it true? Is it helpful? I kind of have to sort through it, and then like, okay, I can go face this situation with a little bit more grace, tenderness.
Very cool.
Yeah. Empathy that's not inauthentic to me, but also not going to emote vomit on them.
Right on.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just slow it down for a second. Like just push pause. Because then I'll also ask myself, it's like, what is true about this right now? Or my wife is struggling with something. It's like, okay, what is true about this right now? That's really helpful for me. Because I know how I feel about it, but it's like, oftentimes we'll be tricked, it's like, especially just out of insecurity or out of, our season, it's like, we'll start to like write these narratives that are like very, I don't know, just pervasive. And so, I start saying things. It's like, well, I guess it's never going to be this, or I guess I'm never going to, get that. And it's like, bro, what are you saying? Like, just what is true about right now? And so push pause, has been really, and even in the moment where it's like, okay, this thing just sent me. It's like, just push pause and, slow it down. Another thing, like, I haven't really been on the Enneagram journey for very long. But before that, I was in counseling, just learning about like the way that like, why do you feel it like that? Or like what, and I think that has been so massive. I should probably get back into counseling, to be honest, but, yeah.
Mitch, I would love to, we are coming up on time. So I'd love to know from you, some suggestions, or, hey, here's some practices you could try, just to grow towards greater health. And then also just, you guys can be thinking about this too, but it's like, what should 4s hear right now? If there was something that you could say to a fellow 4, I would love to know your perspective. But could you first kind of just give us some practices that people should consider?
Yeah. I mean, the first one I mentioned a little bit earlier of, when you have that like, oh man, this didn't go the way I want, and you have that tendency to be disappointed, to actually find and write down those things and sort through that, like, oh, what were some of the wins? Or asking other people around you. You mentioned liking the debrief session, but still, I think there's a practice of writing that down, because it makes it more concrete and real, instead of just this thing that's swirling around. The other thing I was actually going to mention for 1-to-1 4s is actually that slowing it down, that pausing, knowing when your anger is triggered, and to be able to step back and be like, okay, what is it about this? Do I need to be, does this situation warrant this much amperage coming at them? And then, so you don't just project that anger and all those feelings onto other people. And how do I do this in an appropriate way? Something Susan, you mentioned about the banquet table and just this like gratitude. Just gratitude in general is a good practice for any number, but I would also say specifically like for 4s, knowing like, oh, I can be thankful for this and thankful for this. And I don't have to just sit in the suffering or this. It's that, there is happiness. There is other things that are good that are out there, and I can pursue those things. Specifically for a self-pres 4, in that running away from emotions, it may be worth stopping and asking yourself and writing at the top of a page, what is it that I'm trying to get away from in my pursuit of all these other things? I'm working really hard to make sure that what's that underlying motivation for those things, and really trying to unpack that. So those would just be a couple of little things. I mean, there's other things just for, I think, blanket for 4s, is you can get caught up in this, like, I don't want to do these mundane tasks. They're so beneath me, right? Because that's not unique or special. But I think it's, how do you find beauty in the mundane, in the ordinary of life and tasks? Because looking for gas prices is important to some people. And having to do emails and enter in stuff on the computer, it seems so tedious, which is the opposite of what any 4 wants to do. But it's, how can you find beauty even in the mundane? There.
That's good, dude.
Right on. Is there anything that you guys would say to people that think and feel like you? What do they need to hear today?
I mean, recently I saw this thing where it's like, there are some people out there that can take all of your emotions as a 4. And I was like, no, they cannot. I kind of laughed when I read it.
Which is very self-preservation 4 to say that.
Is it?
It's not other 4s. So the social 4 would be like, yeah. And I want to bring them in. And they may not put it out there to everybody, but they more than anything want that. But the self-preservation 4 is like, I can't give this to everybody. I mean, that's more of the thought process. I mean, Luke, you even mentioned you're kind of there too, of like, that had been a practice of yours of everybody gets the 150% emotion, but you're like, oh, I can't, I'm trying to bring that back in a little bit. But I think for the social 4, it's like, they're almost trying to attract people because of what they're going through and the depth that they feel.
Interesting. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good. But I was just saying, if you're a self-pres 4, there are probably a few people who will sit with you in that maybe they're one-to-one people. But I have a one-to-one friend, and it's been very helpful to have someone who can handle some of the deeper, harder things. And I don't have to be so self-protective. So
it's this idea of like, yes, you are unique, but you're not completely alone and isolated and no one understands anything.
Right. Well, it's just like you can let it go, and it's safe to do so.
Gotcha.
You won't be abandoned.
Right on. Right on. Luke, what would you say?
I think what I would say to myself, it's like, there is no one better at being you than you are. There's no one better at being Luke than you are, Luke. And so I know you're trying to become something or to attain something in like a impossibly unique and totally innovative and new way. But it's like, the fact that it's you doing it is what you're looking for. And so there's nobody better at being you than you are. And so just be you, and like quit measuring up to other people. Like comparison is it's gonna kill you. So yeah.
Right on. Well, thank you guys, because you guys do feel, when we talked about it this whole podcast, you do feel emotions that some other numbers and some other subtypes just don't have access to. So these kinds of conversations can be more uncomfortable, because we're diving in, we're digging into like, tell us more about your pain. Tell us more about, these things that you don't like about yourself or whatever. So thank you for having an honest conversation about it. We're going to continue the series over the next several weeks, about 1 episode per week, or as many episodes as we can actually get through and edit and make happen in our calendar. We're so grateful that you're watching, that you're listening. This is episode 4 in this series. So already, if there are people in your life that you feel like need to hear or watch these episodes, send it to them, share it, post about it, spread the word, because we feel like this can be really helpful to people. And we'll continue the series next week with type 5s, talking about subtypes. Saying thanks so much for watching, listening, and we'll catch you next time.